Hello, I am Dr. Amanda Stevens, and I am the research coordinator, the study coordinator for the course study, at least the portion of it that's being done in North America. So I'm in charge of keeping both US and Canada organized, and our purpose today is to go over the US portion of the study, have some training, go through the study flow really slowly, hopefully troubleshoot some ways you're going to make it work in your office, and make sure that it's easy, you're ready to go as soon as we're ready for data collection. So if you're watching this, I'm going to screen share here and we'll go from there. Okay. So we're going to go through some information that is familiar, things we've already gone over, and then we will add some more to it, hopefully troubleshooting how it's actually going to work in your office. So as you know, we are hoping in the long run here to learn about that initial episode of pain that adolescents experience. We know that there's this percentage of adolescents that experience spinal pain. We know that of that percentage, it is a risk factor to becoming an adult who experiences spinal pain as well, and that pain is a major burden on society and on individual lives. And so what we would love to learn long term is, are we able to predict or change that course of pain, that initial course of pain in adolescence, so that we know who is going to live happily ever after and recover within 3 weeks, and who is more likely to become more of a chronic case or a recurrent episode of spinal pain. And so we're hoping to learn what that looks like and long-term see that. But in order for us to do that, we need to test out our study design. And this is where a feasibility study comes in. And that's what we're doing right now. So for our feasibility study, what we want to know is, can we recruit chiropractors? Can those chiropractors recruit patients? Will those patients fill out the questionnaires? And the way that we've designed the study, are we able to collect the data that we're hoping to collect? And so for this feasibility study, we're in each cohort, Australia, US, Canada, and the UK, we're going to be collecting data from 45 patients. And we're going to be able to recruit as many chiropractors as we need in order to get those 45 patients. And hopefully, as long as all this goes well, in the years to come, you'll see a follow-up study where each of those international cohorts will get 1,000 adolescents per study, which would be a pretty sizable endeavor to be involved in. But before we can get too far ahead there, we need to show that we're capable of implementing this study. And that's where you guys come in. So if you are listening in, that means we've already gone through this portion of our study flow, which is basically our chiropractor recruitment. So we won't spend much time there. Where all of this starts is in our screening protocol. So this is actually where we're going to talk the most about everything. So our screening here is meant to be done in a study. In an ideal world, we would have what is called a consecutive sample, meaning every single 12 to 17-year-old patient who is eligible is invited. That doesn't mean they're all going to participate, and that does not mean all your 12 to 17-year-olds are going to be eligible, but we are going to have less biased data if we are able to have that consecutive sample. So that is our goal, although understanding in clinic-based research that is not always perfect, but we are going to aim for perfection. And so what does the screening look like? Let's talk about this, and then we'll actually go over screening together. So the screening can be done either by the chiropractor or by staff who's under the oversight of the chiropractor, as in your administrative staff, or if you have like preceptor student who is working in your office or something like that. And as I mentioned, our goal here is to have every 12 to 17-year-old patient on your schedule screened. And this means it does not need to be a new patient, because it just needs to be a new episode of spinal pain. And we want you to submit for all of those 12 to 17-year-old patients, even if they're not eligible or if they decline to participate. And that's because that demonstrates from a research perspective that we did have more of a consecutive invite. And it also helps us to collect data on who is seeing chiropractors, right? If there's not a new episode of spinal pain, is it a chronic episode of spinal pain? It's just not acute. Is it knee pain and we're seeing more extremities? What is it that is making them excluded? Or if they were eligible, why did they decline, right? Is it because the questionnaire was too long, they didn't want to do that? Or is it because they don't have a cell phone? Or is it because the parents felt uncomfortable with it? Whatever that is, it's useful information for us in our study planning and design for the following study, and just in terms of knowledge in general of who's seeing chiropractors. You have a few options on when to screen. In an ideal world, this would be done prior to their visit. So in order to screen prior to their visit, this could be done at time of booking. So especially if you have booking over the phone or even in person. But if it's over the phone, then you can simply go through this screening questionnaire at that time. Or you could get into the habit, establish a routine of having either yourself or your administrative staff going through the schedule the day before or the morning before a shift, and then calling all those people at that time, making sure that if you have more than one person, especially involved in this, just to put a note in their file so you're communicating within your office that somebody has called them so that you're not getting multiple calls and harassing patients. And then it can also be done in office at the time of visit. So that can be done during your visit or on the way in. And so if it's on the way in, either the chiropractor or the staff can just check in with the patient, do that screener at that time. Or if you initiate that course, the patient comes in and is like, hey, this is what I'm coming in with, then you can at that time invite them to participate and do the screener with them. So let's go over the screener together. And just as a note, we'll talk about a little bit later, but I am going to have basically a folder that is going to have a lot of resources for you in your office, including some little posters that are going to have all of these links so that you can have them very easily accessible in your office. And it's not another thing you have to do is digging around for those links or QR codes. So with the screening form, you're going to enter chiro's name, the patient's initials, and then their email address. And then our inclusion criteria here are they 12 to 17 years old? Yes or no? Do they have spinal pain? Now, here's something that's just to note is that on the screener, you can select multiple areas of spinal pain. And so, I gotta hit a few things there. So you can hit, we could say here that they have neck, mid back, and low back pain. But just as a note looking forward, you're actually going to pick the primary complaint to complete your baseline questionnaire on. So for example, if we're looking at the diagram here, I know you all know what neck, mid backs, and low backs are, but they're there just so we're consistent. So if this patient has neck pain, we want to know, does that neck pain, has it started within the past 6 weeks? Yes. Are they ranking it as moderate to severe intensity, which is a 4 out of 10 or above in the numeric rating scale? Yes. Were they pain-free for 4 weeks or 1 month prior to this episode, so that we know this is a new episode, not a recurrent issue? So relative to their pain, those are the 3 things that we want to know. And just for the sake of our time here, I'm going to say, no, it's not mid-back, no, it's not low back. But like I said, you can actually, for the screener, fill out, if they have pain in all of those areas, you can fill that all out. So beyond those clinical considerations, we also want to know, can this patient speak and read English? Because our questionnaire is currently only available in the English language. Does this patient have a smartphone with internet and text capacity? And are they able to respond to these texts and emails? If they're able to do all of that, those are basically our inclusion criteria. And then we just have a double check here that this spinal pain is not related to a motor vehicle accident, to a workers' compensation case, or to serious spinal pathology, such as a fracture, infection, or cancer. Those would be exclusion criteria for this study. And I did change this wording here so that that is a little bit more direct in case you have your administrative staff completing this for you. So we can say, yes, it is not related to any of those things. And is there any other reason why we think that this patient should not be included in the study? And if we say no here, then you're going to see this pop up that says the patient is eligible to participate. This is a little bit of information about the study. And then if you are interested, which we're going to say, yes, we're interested, then we're going to have a QR code and a link here that you can then either have the patient scan that QR code right away or have them or send them that link. If you're doing this before their visit, I will have a pre-drafted email for you so that you can send them a pre-drafted email with that if you want to give them a little bit more time to review the study instead of being more pressured in the office. And if for any reason any of this was no, right? Like we're like, oh, nope, this pain is actually, as we're going through the screener, it's been going on for longer than 6 weeks. Or if they're just not interested and we hit no here at the bottom, then we can include our reason, right? We can say it's extremity pain. We can say the questionnaire is too long, whatever we want to say. But the important thing is that we do submit whether it's an include or an exclude. So that is our screener, which is arguably the most important step in a lot of ways because it's what's going to initiate that patient into that funnel. And it is the piece that if this is routine practice in your office, it's not going to take very long, right? I went through that slowly because we're talking about each question, but it takes about a minute if you're flying through it with the patient. And so if you get in the habit of doing that or having your front desk do that for every patient, we will be able to recruit patients for this study so much faster. And in the cohort in Australia that has already started before us, this has been their biggest barrier, is actually having offices administrate the screening tool. So once that screening tool is completed and we know if they're included or excluded. So if they are excluded, you submit the form, you proceed with your care, you move on. Do what you are going to do with the patient anyway. If they're included, then as I mentioned, I will have a pre-drafted email that you can send them if you're connecting with them prior to their visit. If you're checking in with them at the time of their visit to see either if they read that email that you sent with them or sent to them before, or just to talk to them about the study if they haven't had that chance to connect with it. And then if they are included, as I mentioned, we'll have them fill out that consent. Sorry, if they're eligible to be included and they choose to participate, then we will have them fill out their consent form and baseline within 24 hours after that of that initial visit. And so that's us moving on to the informed consent and baseline. So this link, as I mentioned in QR code, those will be available for you so that you can pop these up anytime they're useful to you in your office. And so with the informed consent is such an important part of research. And we want to make sure that both the parent and patient have an opportunity to have their questions answered. If you guys have any questions you are not able to answer, then I'm your first line of defense there. You can connect with me or have the parent or participant connect with me if they want. But basically, if in a nutshell, if you're able to review with them in person, the study design, that's very helpful because a lot of people don't want to read through, although we did try to keep the consent form actually as concise as possible. But basically the layout relative to the patient is that they're going to fill out 2 questionnaires and answer 11 text messages, 1 a week for 11 weeks. After they complete both the initial and the baseline questionnaire, they're going to get emailed a voucher for a $20 gift card, which we'll talk about later, and that it does not change their care in any way. This is really important to note that being part of this study isn't going to change, it's not going to discount their care with you. It's not going to, if they say yes or they say no, it's not going to impact their relationship with you in any way. Their care will be the same. We do need both the parent and the patient to sign this consent form. And although it's on the same form, there's just a spot for each of them to do that. And we want that done on the same day as the baseline, or sorry, as their initial visit, because the baseline questionnaire should be answered as if relative to prior to that initial visit. And we don't really expect recall to be all that good. A few extra notes. If a parent wants to know what questions their kid is going to be asked on these baseline questionnaires, I will have in your resource folder a PDF copy of all of those questions. And it is a good opportunity as well, especially with your younger adolescent patients, just to mention that they will be getting a text from the same number every time that is going to have an identifier saying, hey, this is the course study team. Here's your text message for this week. So it's a good teaching opportunity there too, just to comment that we should not be answering or opening links on unexpected or suspicious texts. This is coming from a secure research portal. It is an auto send. It's not me sending them out. They're happening automatically. I do not believe that the patient actually has the opportunity to respond to those texts, but if they do need anything, any support with them, they can connect with me directly. And they will be sent some reminders, just as a note, if they ask. I believe our initial reminder always goes out on Sunday to say, hey, here's your text, go and check in where you are. And if they don't answer that, they'll get 1 or 2 more reminders that week until they fill it out. So that is the consent form. Once they've finished the consent form, it is going to automatically direct them to the baseline. And our baseline is absolutely our biggest ask. Our patient baseline is our biggest ask. If I fly through the patient baseline, it takes me only about 5 minutes to complete it, but we're recommending allotting 15 to 30 minutes to do so because we don't want the patients flying through it like I do. We want them answering truthfully and reflecting upon those answers. We do encourage you to have them fill out before your office visit if that's possible, whether that means having them show up a few minutes early or doing it at home on their own. But that's not required as long as it's done within 24 hours of that initial visit, as I've said about 5 times now. And your answers do need to reflect the status prior to that treatment. Once that questionnaire is completed, then I will send them an electronic gift card for $20, which is through expressgiftpay.com. It's the same system they've been using in Australia, and it's been working really well for them. Basically, with this system, I send them a $20 voucher, and then they can go onto this website, and there's a list of different places that they can choose where they want that gift card from, which is really cool. And if there is any assistance required to complete this, for example, if we're working with a 12-year-old patient who doesn't have a really strong reading literacy, then there is a question at the end of the questionnaire that asks if they had any assistance filling this out. But we do absolutely want the patients filling these things out and the patients responding to the text as opposed to the parents. And this is because 2 things. 1, the research has shown that adults that are parents grossly underreport our adolescents' experience of pain or their children's experience of pain. And so we want to be accurate and really reflecting on what is being experienced by the adolescents. And also all of the things that we are asking them to complete have been shown appropriate in this age group as well. Because basically the baseline questionnaire is a whole bunch of standardized questionnaires that we've put together and then put into a format that's easy for them to complete. And when I say we, it's not me, it's the study team in Australia, and then we've just been tweaking things as we go into the US portion here. So that is the baseline questionnaire. And if you have gone through the screening and the patient consent and the baseline, those are all done, then your administrative staff is completely done if they've been helping you, which is good. And I do encourage you, I've been part of a few different practice-based research networks, and having your administrative staff, if available, to really implement these things as part of routine and just systematically is so much better than trying to remember or add it on to your clinical practice day. So from there, after the patient has finished their baseline questionnaire, then the chiropractor is going to be sent a baseline questionnaire as well. So this is one of our 2 asks within the study for the chiropractor. We'll go through it together here in a second, but basically what the baseline questionnaire, from the chiropractor asks about the patient's spinal pain presentation, and then it's going to ask you about 2 orthopedic evaluations. In terms of our capacity to prognosticate the outcome of a spinal pain episode, we would like to know if there's any predictive value to hyper or hypomobility, right? If the patient's very flexible, is it more likely to persist? Or if the patient is very stiff, are they likely to persist longer? Those would be good things for us to know, specific to adolescent patients, because they have been shown relevant in other conditions such as whiplash disorders and concussions. So we're going to use these as, or the things we're going to use to evaluate these are the Baton hypermobility score and the fingertips to floor distance. With both of these tests, if you're familiar with them, they take about 30 seconds to complete. I will have, or I already have done, 2 videos that are demonstrating these tests. So those will be available to you in your resource folder as well. And I have also created this handout that will be a PDF in that resource folder so that it's very easy for you to complete that questionnaire, so that as you're reporting it in the REDCap system, as we follow this link, then it'll be in the same order. It'll be really quick for you to go and do it. With both of these orthopedic tests, these are the only thing that we're asking you to do in the office. Otherwise, you do your evaluation, you do your treatment plan, everything else it doesn't change at all in terms of the patient care. So let's do this together. So our chiropractic baseline is here. As I mentioned, this looks a lot like the screening does, but whereas on the screening, I could have selected more than one of these, on the baseline, I can only pick one. So you're going to pick whichever one is their primary complaint, right? So this time we'll go with our mid-back pain. And this is going to ask, and you'll notice here it will say what the date was of the initial visit and who this patient is. This is obviously a fabricated patient. Does this spinal pain refer or radiate to the extremities or head? Having a headache in conjunction with neck pain, for example, is not an exclusion criteria. That's a good thing for us to know. But if there's anything going down the arms, going down the legs, we would like to know that. With this mid-back pain, we're going to say no. If I had have said yes, it wouldn't have really changed much on here. It's just one data point on its own. Does this spinal pain coexist with other things? So this is where we would say, actually, yeah, they have a headache, they have extra things. So this is where, if, okay, yes, they have mid-back, but there's also some low back and neck pain, we could add those on there, that there's some tension in those areas. Or if you want to select other, it will pop up here so that you can complete whatever else that is. How long has this episode been going on? So we're going to say that this began 2 weeks ago. You'll notice that all of the options are below 6 weeks because that was one of our inclusion criteria. This had to be a new episode of pain within the last 6 weeks. We want to know, was this trauma or non-traumatic with a known mechanism of injury here, or do we not even know where this came from? So we're going to say this was non-traumatic. Patient was studying too much. Has they experienced this before? Yes or no. If we hit yes here, these questions next will be kind of more relevant. If I hit no here, they're less relevant, but you can still fill them out. So how many months ago did the first episode go on? So if we say yes, we'll say, oh, well, this happened 6 months ago, but they recovered. And this has happened to them twice before. Or you can say it hasn't happened at all before. And have they ever had chiropractic care for this kind of spinal pain before? You can give a yes or a no. No, we'll say no, this is their first time seeing chiropractic. So once you're familiar with those questions, that will only take you about a couple minutes to finish that one. And then on the next page here, page 2 of 2, is just those orthopedic evaluations that we discussed. So if you're familiar with the Baton hypermobility score, it is a very straightforward scoring system. Basically, you get a point for everything that's a yes here. So if passive dorsiflexion and hyperextension of the fifth MCP is beyond 90 degrees, And that's a left or a right, yes or no. We're going to say neither. Does their thumb go down to the flexor aspect of their forearm? We're going to say no, it doesn't. Are they able to hyperextend their elbow more than 10 degrees? We're going to say, yeah, they can do that on both sides. Do they hyperextend their knees? No. Can they do the forward flexion all the way so that their palms are flat on the floor? And I'm going to say no. So in this scenario, as I just flew through this, this would have been a 2 out of 9 on here. So you're going to put a 2 there. And just as a note, while you're actually doing this in your office, this last piece here is actually basically the same as the fingertips to floor. So if you got a yes here, if they had palms flat onto the ground, then your answer to the fingertips to floor question is going to be 0, right? Because if either their fingertips or their palms are touching the floor, this number is going to be a 0. But if there's any space between their fingertips and the floor, when they're doing that forward fold, then that is what you're going to report in this area. So we'll say that they were 4 centimeters from the floor. And we do request, if you can, to please put that in centimeters, because that's what everybody else is going to be doing. So please do so. And then if they had any stiffness or pain on the fingertips to floor test, we can note that there. Or if it wasn't limited, because it was a yes here, and then we put that. So that is it. You hit submit, you are done. And if you filled out the PDF in Office, like I said, it will be exactly the same format and order that it is here. We used the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome protocol for those. So that is the chiropractor's baseline. And once you are done the chiropractor's baseline, you just continue on with your care. You just do your thing. You do you for the next 3 months. You don't have to do anything else involved with the study. Certainly, if your patients or their parents bring up any questions about the study, you can answer those or forward them to me. But otherwise, you don't do anything. Well, in the meantime, your patient is going to be receiving a text message once a week that's going to be asking them about their current pain rating, how they are rating their progress so far, if they're getting better, if they're getting worse, and if they've had any adverse response to any of the care that you've provided them as well, which are very useful questions for us to see. And I should just note here too that if it's part of your clinical care, you need to refer them for imaging, you need to refer them to another professional, or you need to discharge them because they're perfect, then you do that. That doesn't impact the study at all. They will keep getting text messages once a week, even if they've recovered fully within 2 weeks. At the end of that period of time, so at the end of the 3 months from the first one, the adolescent is automatically going to be sent another follow-up questionnaire. This one is a lot shorter than their first one, but they will still get a $20 gift card when they finish it. And when they completed theirs, then you will also get one. The chiropractor's final report is also shorter than the chiropractor's baseline, and we will go through that one together here as well. So with the chiropractor's final report, like I said, this will automatically be sent to you through REDCap as well. It is shorter than your baseline, and it's basically going to ask about what treatment you provided and how long it was. Once you complete this, you are done. So let's go through that together. As you notice, we're on the same fake patient here. And it's over the last 3 months, so from the time of that initial visit with this new spinal pain complaint. Regarding the duration of care, how many weeks were you seeing this patient for chiropractic care? So out of the 11, 12 weeks that's gone on, we'll say you saw them for 8 weeks. Of that, within that 8 weeks, how many times did you see them? We'll say you saw them 12 times in that 8 weeks. In the first few weeks, you saw them twice a week. And then how much did the total cost of that period of time? This might take you a little bit of math depending on how you're recording it at home, or if you have a standard price per visit, so you'll be able to do that math pretty quickly. So I don't know what this would be. I'm not going to do the math in my head right now. We'll say it cost them $400. And it might vary too, depending on if this was their initial exam visit with you included in this number of visits versus if this was an established patient with a new episode of pain and they were all either re-exam or regular office visits for you. And then, was this patient referred for imaging? If you say yes, we're going to ask you what kind. If you say no, there's going to be nothing that pops up here. And then down here, it's going to ask what interventions you use. Now, you don't need to be super specific in terms of what techniques you used within your adjusting techniques, but we do want you to rank them in the order they're most frequently used. So if, for example, spinal manipulative therapy was your first line of defense here, was your primary treatment, you can write adjustments, or adjusting, or spinal manipulative therapy, whatever you want to term it there. You are welcome to, if you feel it was important to the care, or you want to have it recorded to mention if that was drop technique or diversified or whatever you use in your office. Soft tissue therapies, or maybe you used instrument-assisted soft tissue therapies, maybe you used cupping, maybe you provided nutrition or ergonomic assessments, but whatever was the most frequent to the least frequent used, and just separating them with the comma in between. And trying to avoid shorthand, which I know is hard. I have a hard time with that, but trying to avoid shorthand so that I don't have to connect with you later and clarify it, which I will do if I don't understand what it means. So you fill that out and then click submit, and then you are done once you've done that. So you can also, within your own system, when you get those messages, ask your front desk to create a little post-it or an email to you that answers some of those questions, right? Like how many visits and how much it cost, how many weeks that was. Those are certainly things you can have your administrative staff support you on. But the treatments obviously would be something that you would know more about. So our total ask for our chiropractors and their offices is we need you to screen a consecutive amount of 12 to 17-year-olds that are going through your office. Of those that are eligible, you invite them to participate, and if they choose to participate, following up with them to make sure that they've signed their informed consent and their baseline, and they've completed their baseline questionnaire within the same day as that initial visit. And then you fill out your baseline questionnaire, which we don't put as tight of a timeline on you, but I'd encourage you to do that also within that same day, because it always takes less time when you do it right away. And then 3 months later, you fill out the final report. Otherwise, the care is the same for that patient that they would have been even if they weren't in the study. And as I've mentioned before, within all of this, I'm here to help. My job is basically to keep everyone on track, to make sure everything's getting done, and to make your life easier. So if there's anything I can do to help, whether you want me to do some training directly with your staff or connect with them directly to troubleshoot anything, my info is right here. This is my email and my cell number. You're welcome to connect with me anytime. And then, as I mentioned a couple times too, I will be providing you with a link to a shared resource folder that will include posters that you can have in your office that are going to have links and QR codes to the screening and the patient informed consent. I'll give you a handout that has the Bateman hypermobility scale. We'll have a PDF of the questionnaires so that if anybody asks any questions, you have that resource available. I'll have videos of those orthos. If there's anything else that you can think of that would make this easier for you, just let me know and I will include those. And then you will also be getting some emails from me periodically, probably everywhere from every 1 to 4 weeks. And these will have progress reports, just so you're kept privy to what is going on and where. We might even, once the Canadian counterpart is kept up, we might include those together just so that you guys get to see how each other are doing. And yeah, so you'll see how many patients we've recruited, how far along they are. And then if we come up with any good little research pearls, we'll include those on there too, just as an added value for you guys. And you keep going like that until I tell you that we have reached 45 patients. And once we have reached 45 patients, I'll send you an email and you are done. From there, we will basically we keep following up with those 45 patients for 3 months, and you'll have your final questionnaires to complete at the end of that 3-month period, but you can stop the screening and stop inviting new people once we reach that 45. if everybody is the superstars that I believe them to be, I really think this is an achievable goal. I would love to see it done in 3 months, but we'll see what happens. I have a feeling that I have a few of you here that could hammer this whole thing out on your own in 1 month if you're really powering through it in your clinic. But the capacity to do it and us actually doing it are two different measurements. So I'm very hopeful on this. And if there is anything that I can do to make it easier for you, please let me know. I will be happy to help and facilitate you in any way. So here we go. To pop back on here. Well, I hope that that was helpful as a little bit more in depth of a run through with a little bit more information on how we can really run this together and run it smoothly, gives you an idea more of what that's going to look like in your office. And if you have any questions at all on how to set up, let me know. I will be sending out the recording for this as soon as it's available. And then I will be sending you also a link to the shared resource folder as soon as I have that ready for you too. In the meantime, hold tight. We don't have the green light yet for our adolescent invites. As soon as we have that, you will be getting an email from me that we're good to go. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for listening.